So on this episode, we're joined by Trace Foster, guitar tech for some of the biggest names in rock and roll and founder of the new group Close Enemies, a killer new band that features Aerosmith legend Tom Hamilton. So Trace, how are you today?
Fantastic. How you doing, buddy?
I am good, man. I go by the name Metal Walt. I'm located in New Jersey. We'll get to this later, but I'm excited to talk Close Enemies with you because I was at that Boston show in early January.
That was a great show, right?
That was an excellent show, and I want to get all into that. But listen, Trace, I think it's
Sure.
important for us to get to know you a little bit, and
Okay.
kind of how you worked your way up through the industry, because you got an amazing story here. So maybe first of all, like, where did you grow up, and how did you get into the industry and eventually rise in the ranks?
So I grew up in Rockford, Illinois, home of Cheap Trick.
Yeah, baby.
I've been playing guitar since I was probably, 7 or 8, 9 years old, whatever. My brother was a killer drummer, musician, singer, songwriter, and he got me into music early. And it's kind of in our family kind of thing. Well, here's a funny Cheap Trick story. So I used to be a busboy at a restaurant, and I was only 15, so I wasn't able to work. And I worked only on Sundays because I didn't serve alcohol in Illinois on Sundays. So I was able to work on Sundays because I was under 16. And Rick's mom and dad, Ralph, and I forget what his mom's name was, they would come in every Sunday, and I was their busboy. And every Sunday they would come in. I didn't know Rick at the time, and they would come in, and one day his mom says, "Come, I had a little bit longer hair." His mom says to me, she goes, "Hey, do you play guitar?" And I go, "Yeah, I do." And she said, "You know my son?" I go, "Oh yeah." I go, "I love Cheap Trick. I love your son. This is great." And
Uh,
she says, "I'm going to bring you a surprise next Sunday." And I've been like pouring coffee for these people for like 8 months, and wait
uh,
till they come and be real nice and just whatever. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, a Fender Strat, Fender Tele, what am I getting? Because Ralph, his dad owned a music store, and so I'm thinking something cool is going to happen. And so the next Sunday comes and they show up, and I'm all excited. I'm pouring coffee, and I'm like, "Well, where's my guitar?" And she goes, "Oh, I forgot I got you something." And she hands me a Cheap Trick sticker.
well,
And I remember telling Rick about that, 10 years later when I'm working for him. And it's so funny. I was like, mm-hmm.
that's funny. I thought you were going to say she brought her son in, like brought him in for breakfast. That would have been the kicker, right?
I worked at the movie theater, and Robin Zander and his wife came in to see like a late night movie. And I worked Joe Perry project. They played a show in Rockford, and they called my manager at the movie theater, wanted to do like after it was closed, come in and see Airplane. And she said, "No, we can't do that." And it was funny because she come on, she said, "You know who Joe Perry is?" I go, "Yeah." I know, I'm like, "Of course I do." And she goes, "Well, they called here because they want to do, they wanted to do the, after the movie was closed and they can come in." And so I said, "Well, where were they staying?" And she told me the hotel because she had to call them back. And so I called him because I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna tell them it's okay, and we'll figure it out." So I called them.
Wow.
They'd already got another movie theater. But I remember telling Joe that one day. I was like, "I almost met you when I was like 16." But I moved to Los Angeles right out of high school, and I started playing in a band, got a record deal, like everybody else in the '80s. You thought you're going to rule the world and fly around in a jet with Mick Jagger, and then next thing you're unemployed, looking for a new girlfriend that can pay the rent. So there you go. Welcome to LA. And then a buddy of mine had called me and said, "Hey, there's a person going in the studio, needs a guitar tech. Would you be interested in going in and doing stuff?" And I was sitting at home and I said, "You know what? Okay, sure." And I realized when I went in the studio that I had a knack for sounds. I back in the day when I was young too, and they had a thing called a Fostex, which was a 4-track tape machine. It ran on a cassette, it would record both sides at the same time. And then you had to do these things where you bounce 2 tracks to one, and so you could do more. And it was really a long process, but that always sounded bad. But I was the guy that learned how to use it to where it sounded good because I just naturally, gravitated towards that. And I never had any idea of any of this. I just, do what I do. And then after I got done in the studio, I started getting more phone calls like, "Hey, you available to come in the studio with me?" And all these artists, right? And then I did a Melissa Etheridge record back in 1993, and she asked me to go on the road, and I went on the road as her guitar tech, and I also played keyboards and guitar during her live show. So that was kind of the best of both worlds for me. And that's kind of, I mean, I've done it earlier in the 80s and 90s and stuff, but that's how like 1993 it really just took off and I haven't looked back. And every time I would say I don't want another gig, I would get a bigger gig. So I don't know. I don't know why. I just for whatever reason, I just seem to always be in the right place at the right time. And I guess I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
That's kind of it.
I mean, there's a million guitar techs out there, and but like, let's say for me, like the average fan, right? Like we see a
Yeah.
guitar tech such as yourself as, you're the guy that's side stage, you're tuning the guitars, you're going back and forth between the road cases, bringing guitars out, getting the straps on, wiping them down, and you hand them to your artist, and then you just kind of walk off like 5 feet. But there's got to be more to it, right? So like, what's a daily routine like? You're going out on a big tour like Melissa Etheridge. What's your daily routine like? You know, something like that.
Well, so I mean, you basically wake up and you go in around noon because they got to set the lights up and this, the sound up and stuff. All the stuff in the air has to go in before obviously any of the band gear can go in. So like an arena tour, you usually get in there around, noon, 12:30, usually eat before I start. And then I'll just set up my backline, which is what you call, the band gear. They call it backline. You just set it up and then I just check it. And then we usually most of the guys that do what I do play, like drum techs play drums, and they don't have to. There's some good ones that don't. But so then we have, crew jams where we make sure we go over all the, everything to make sure it's working correctly. And then we play a couple songs for the guy doing sound so he can hear everything. And he might have a few things he wants to tweak. And then when you're done with that, you basically, if the band sound checks, a lot of bands do, some don't. And then you do that, and then basically it's dinner time, show time, load out, and then either you go to a day off or you do it all over again. Rinse and repeat kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you said it, kind of joking about yourself, but all kidding aside, obviously you have a great reputation based on, some of the bands that you've been a tech for. But like, what the simplest question? What makes it a great tech? Like, what makes it so important for you to be getting these big
Ah,
names calling you?
well, here's something that people ask me this all the time, and it's funny because first thing I say is I am not by any means. I'm a very honest person. I am nowhere near the best or smartest guitar tech out there. The thing that I have is I have the ability to understand because I'm a musician, obviously. So I understand what a person's looking for. And I pretty much will know before they even know or say anything what they need, what needs to happen. Like if you just knowing like let's say I'm working for you, I would know your catalog. I would know what you're supposed to sound like, and I would be able to facilitate that every day. Every day you're going to walk in, it's going to sound like that because, a lot of guys don't have that ability. So that's kind of what I guess my thing is. I'm really good at sounds and getting things to work and sound right daily. And that's kind of hard because it's always different. Sometimes you're playing outside and it's hot. Sometimes you're outside and it's cold. Some days it's raining. All that changes the sound day to day. I mean, it just does. It's just what it does. And I always tell people, I said it's usually about 40% knowledge and 60% personality because you have to, number one, you have to get along with people. You have to understand people and you have to, I'm not a fanboy. I'm not, I've met everybody. I don't care. It doesn't bother me or doesn't make me go, oh my gosh, that's such a, I don't care. It's a job. It's like I just want to do the best I can do and make you sound great, make me sound great and, pay my bills. And so
Yeah.
that's, like with, pretty much every band I've ever worked for, I consider, we have really good working relationships and just, you know, individually we understand each other, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, again, you've worked with some amazing musicians. I mean, the three that come to mind are, obviously your top three probably be with Joe Perry, Tom Hamilton, and Angus Young, So I would say like,
There's one in there that you don't know. Well, you should know. I worked for Ronnie Wood for a couple of years as well.
yes, I have
Rolling
it on my
Stone.
question list, but I kept that in a different order because I wanted to talk about Hackneys and Diamond, but we'll get to
Oh
that. But
yeah. Okay,
you
cool,
know,
cool, cool.
well, we'll talk about let's say the Aerosmith guys and
Yeah.
Angus. So I would say like one by one, like paint the picture of what these guys were like, and be candid. Like, tell us the good and the bad. Like, what were these tours like?
There's there was never any bad with any of those guys, in all honesty, if there was, I wouldn't be there. That's the other thing. It's like I'm not going to work for somebody that is a jerk or an asshole, if I can say that. I mean, because it's just like life is way too short for that. You know what I mean? It really is. I don't want to make myself miserable. I mean, so I've actually turned down gigs that offered me a whole lot of money because I know the person I was going to work for, I was not going to get along with them. And I mean, it's not worth it. All I want to say, the AC/DC guys, especially, Angus is amazing. Those guys are awesome. I mean, I've been there 10 years, and I mean, I hope that I can retire with those guys. I really do because I mean, Angus is all of them, the organization, everybody from the beginning to the end, the top to the bottom is just class act, and that's so great. Aerosmith, same way, Joe and I had moments where, Joe's creativity sometimes can really go sideways and you got to kind of rein him in because he's so creative, and he hears things that, a lot of people don't. But once you kind of get into his head, you kind of understand what he's looking for. And I remember with Joe, I could go, I would build his guitar, I would build his guitar world without him knowing it until the first day of rehearsal. So I would have amps he's never heard of. And I would always just crack myself up going, he's going to love this one, or, we'll see what he thinks. And he usually did because it was something new. And, guys like that, like challenged a lot. Like I work with Rick Nielsen at Cheap Trick. He never wanted anything to change. It's always been the same thing for 40 something years, and that's, so you just got to know, where you're at with which guy.
You're currently with AC/DC then, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So this is big news, right, for us fans because they're hitting the States for the first time. I have to be honest, I live in New Jersey and New York. I'm disappointed. There's not an area tour date. I'm hoping there'll be more to come. I thought there was going to be a second round announcement, then they just dumped Europe. But like, I know you say you've been with him for 10 years, but like, what's it like, hooking up with Angus? Like, you haven't seen him in a year. You're going to go see him somewhere in the States, the first show. Like, what's he like as a person? Does he sit you down and say, you know what, Trace, like, this is how it's got to be done this tour. We're changing the set list around or whatever.
Nope. Rinse and repeat. See, that's the thing. That's why everyone that's worked with those guys has been there forever. And, you hire pros and then you people stick around because they're treated well. I mean, like I said, just class act, and you don't ever want to leave. You have to be escorted out the door of the band like that because you just never want to leave. They have to send security for you.
Right.
And it's inspiring for me to see Angus doing his thing. Because I remember, okay, growing up as a kid, Joe Perry and Angus Young are the two guitar players I learned how to play guitar from. So think about that. Think about the two people that inspired you the most growing up, and now all of a sudden, they're paying your mortgage payment. That's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And to think about, like, let's say the tone of these guys, like Angus has a certain tone. He's got a certain signature style, so in a sense, you got to get that down. And, maybe my other thought is, or a question here is, you guys technicians, in a sense, you have to know the set list, right? You have to know the 20 songs they're playing because,
why wouldn't
down, but I'm saying not just knowing it, but like actually playing it. Like, do you actually yourself play the set list? Like, God forbid there's an emergency or you got to step in, string breaks, he's got to walk off.
So Aerosmith, I was actually the guy in the wings waiting to, I know the whole show for Tom and for Brad. So Brad got COVID during rehearsal, so I filled in for Brad in rehearsals. Never had to play for Tom before, which is, I wish I did because it was a lot of work to learn those bass parts. Oh my gosh, so good. And yeah, obviously you would never step in for Angus or anybody like that. That's just silly. But I mean, I pretty much do know, and you can't help, if you're a musician, you can't help not know that stuff when you're out there. I mean, when you listen to the Rolling Stones, perfect example, listening to Ronnie Wood play every night, all of a sudden the stuff that you start writing and playing yourself starts to sound like Ronnie Wood. That's just gonna happen, you absorb it, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, sure thing. It makes sense. I mean, and just look in the Aerosmith camp. I mean, John Douglas ended up coming in when Joey couldn't continue on. He just stepped right in and took the tour. You look at a guy like Tommy Thayer, right? He was Ace's guitar tech for many years, friends with Gene and Paul from the Black and Blue days. And, he put 20, 25 years in. So it does happen.
I was Brad and I are really good friends, Whitford, and we actually live right down the street from each other. And I always said, one of these days you got to get that blue flu, buddy, so I can get up there and do a show because it's just like it's a lot of work. And it's funny because it's 28 songs that I made sure I knew. And every day I'd wake up in the morning and play through the whole 28 songs on guitar. Then the next day I'd play all 28 songs on the bass every day just to make sure.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you don't know. It's not like they're going to give you 12 hours advance notice. It's going to be like, hey, what are you doing in an hour? You're playing a show. Get out there, So you got
Listen,
to be.
yeah, I recently saw Foghat in New Jersey, and Roger
Yeah.
Earl got sick. He got sick
Yep.
that morning, and he had to call up the drummer Jules Rodino of Blue Oyster Cult literally at 11 in the morning, and he showed up to the gig and played 8 hours later.
See, that's it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and it's fine. Like I said, you don't have to do that. I mean, that's just, I know some really good techs that, are not that guy. That's more what I do than like I'm not going to tear an amp apart in the middle of the stage and rebuild it for you. I wouldn't. I'd probably electrocute myself. But I know great guys to call that could do that for me. That's kind of what I do.
right.
I kind you just got to have the right people in place, and that's, after 40 years, you kind of have your peeps, as they say. So here you go. So Tommy Thayer, right? You're talking about Tommy joining Kiss.
Yeah.
So Tommy had Black and Blue going, right? And he told me the story, so I know it's true. And he said that Gene come up to him and said, "Hey, your band is going nowhere. Come work for me, and at least you'll have a future." So Gene had him archiving stuff, Kiss
Wow.
archives. So he literally went from playing in Black and Blue to shutting it all down and going to work for Kiss. What a hard choice that must have been.
Yeah. And
But
Gene
apparently,
had him on his label. I think Black and Blue was on Gene's
yeah,
label. I
I know.
remember that. I
He
remember
basically
buying
told
the
him to
tape,
stop doing.
right? Kiss the ring. And Gene up there, kiss the
I
ring,
know.
kiss
Yeah,
the
here you go,
Godfather.
boys.
So funny, man. So true, these stories, right?
That's insane. That's just some of the stuff you can't make up because it's just so funny and so real.
Well, you mentioned Ron Wood. I mean, the
Yeah.
Stones have had this amazing, they just have sustained their career for so long, and they keep coming back every couple of years. And I think it was last summer was of no exception. Hackneys and Diamonds was a great album. So, were you in the studio with Ron for the
Yep.
recording of the album?
I did the record.
No. Where was it
Then you can
recorded?
see there's a poster I'm pointing to right there. That's a Hackney Diamonds poster from the show in New York that we
Okay.
did the one show when the album came out, and I was there for that. Yeah, that was we rehearsed like in New York and then LA, and then I think we recorded it in LA. Man, it was like unbelievable. It's
What?
again, I've had so many of these moments, man. It's like in my life where I just wake up and I do, ow, because
Yeah.
you know, when I was 15 years old, the Stones played in Rockford, Illinois, and I remember, trying to get a ticket, trying to get a ticket. I finally did, and I remember paying like way too much money, back then, and it was like,
Yeah.
buddy. And now I'm like, wow, now I could just call Ronnie up and say, hey, I want to come to the show. It's like, wow, what a difference, 30 years makes. So.
Now, were the guys in the studio together, or was this like all individual parts in different studios?
No, man, it was those guys. I mean, we worked through the songs, and I think when we finally got to the studio, they'd already worked on them. So it was, yeah, it was amazing. I mean, how could it not be amazing? I mean, you got to look around, and you just go, these guys are the best of the best. And I've been a fly on the wall so many times. I've done records with Jack Douglas and Hugh Padgham and all these amazing producers and I just sit back and absorb. Like I said, I love to do that. I like to absorb what these people do and just try to, and try to just get anything you can from it. And if I'm one of my favorite things to say is if you're not learning if you're talking, you should just really sit back and just let it happen. And it's so cool.
Before we get into Close Enemies,
Yeah.
one of my favorite songs on the album, the Stones album, is "Sweet Sounds of Heaven" that featured Lady
Oh
Gaga.
man.
Were you around for her? Was she there when you were there?
She was sitting right next to me when she started singing that. Oh, because she just came in, sat in the floor and was listening. And then all of a sudden, headphones and a mic showed up, and there you go. And it was like sweet sounds of heaven. What a sweet lady she is. Oh, beautiful lady. Oh, just wonderful. I mean, just got chills thinking about what a cool moment that was.
So we're talking with Trace Foster about his new band, Close Enemies. So Trace, those are some awesome backstories as your career as a guitar
Thank
tech. But
you.
let's get into the presence now. The present. Close Enemies. First of all, where did the band name come from?
You know, this is how much time do we have? This is a true story. So,
Take all the time you want.
okay, so here we are. We've got this great project. We've got everybody in place, and we're like, okay, got to name the band. So we all start throwing names out. We got 100 names out. I'm telling you, man, it is not easy to find a name that is not being used or has been used. It's so impossible. We were making up stuff like, donkey vomit and stuff like that. Look it up. Look it up. Google it. There's a band called Donkey Vomit, and most of them are out of Seattle. I don't know why, but that's what like the Seattle punk rock scene. It's so weird. So finally, Peter Stroud's wife Lynn said something about the Godfather and then Close Enemies, and as soon as Peter said she said that, it was just like, well, that one's taken. It's got to be. And then lo and behold, we're like, there's no way it wasn't. It was available, so we jumped on it, and there you go. There was a
That's it.
movie, and there was a movie called Close Enemies a few years ago, but that's it. So we were
Well,
like, wow, it was work.
yeah, I'm sure it is. I've heard that story before, right? Just you think either you think something's taken, so you don't search it, or then you search a million things and you realize it's taken, and it makes it almost an impossibility.
It's like the girlfriend in school the girl in school who was just so beautiful that you didn't want to ask her out because you knew she had a boyfriend, but she never went out with anybody all through high school because nobody ever asked her out.
There you go. There you go.
So,
Well, it's a good name. It's a good name, Close Enemies. I like it.
and it fits us because, it's like, like Chasen says, our singer, he said, it's just the world we live in, everybody's close, but everyone just seems to be enemies of each other now. It's just a weird time. So, there you go.
Yeah.
But
So, I mean, Tom Hamilton's name, it's used a lot. It's thrown out there in terms of the advertising, but let's be honest. I think this is your baby. You took this from the ground up. But
yes.
let's say, how did the band come together? And talk about the other members aside from you and Tom. Who are they?
Yeah.
And where'd you get them?
Well, first off, what happened was a buddy of mine about, I don't know, 10 years ago, we were doing a show and he was a drum tech and he says to me, I was just playing guitar and he goes, why aren't you in a band? He said, why are you doing this? Why aren't you in a band? I said, man, I've been through all that. I said, all it is heartache and I hate record companies. I hate all this other stuff and I just don't want to do it. It's just, I would rather just do this. And then not too long after that, somebody else had said something to me. And then Joe Perry's the one that started it. There's a picture right, I can't get to it, my top over there. And
Uh-huh.
it's an autograph that Joe gave me. And this is the truth. And it says, to trace the guitar monster, love Joe. And I said, why did you put that? And he goes, because you're a monster guitar player. And I was like, wow, if all these people seem to think I should be doing something, maybe I should do something. So I put together this I actually joined a Southern rock band. It was really good. And we did some touring and we were in a van and I was like, okay, I had fun, but then I had to go back to work. And then I was like, you know what? I think I really want to do this. I think I want to do this the right way. So my first phone call was to Peter Stroud. Peter plays with Sheryl Crow, has been for 25 years. He's played with Don Henley. I mean, he's played with everybody. I mean, he's just an amazing guitar player. I was with the band called the Indigo Girls in the late 90s, and he was with Sheryl Crow, and we did the Little Affair together. And I would make everybody stay because they were on after us just so I could see Peter play. I mean, he was just such a great player, and it just felt natural for me to ask Peter. And I had met him through Ed Roland from Collective Soul like the year before. And so, we just, contacted each other and he was very, very, he said, well, what do you got? And I'd been working with this guy named Gary Steer, who was a singer-songwriter that I've been writing with since the early 80s in Atlanta, Georgia. He was in a band called Buffalo Nickel, and he had a record out on Universal. And then, just somebody, great songwriter. So him and I started writing songs, and then we asked Peter, and Peter was totally down with it. And then we're like, okay, let's just write some songs. So we wrote songs for like 3 months, and we thought, wow, these songs are great. First song we wrote was, Train, the Sound of a
Hmm.
Train, first song we released. I so I mean, right off the bat, we're like, okay, we're doing pretty good. So then we got a different bass player and a different drummer. Actually, Dax Nielsen and Cheap Trick was playing drums with us for a while. And so then once we got serious, we realized we had to find some people that had the time to do this. Because if we're going to really, we didn't want it to be a project. This is not a project. This is a band. So we went ahead and Peter knows Tony Brock, of course, Tony Brock from the Babies, Rod Stewart. And this is true as well when Peter said, "Hey, I can ask Tony Brock to play drums." And my response was, "The Tony Brock?" Because Tony Brock is insane. That's, you know, I don't know how keen you are on drummers, but man, there's drummers and then there are drummers.
Yeah.
And Tony's what I call a lyrical drummer. What he does is he plays, I can tell you what song he's playing by his part because of the way he
Mhm.
plays. You can feel the movement. Keith Moon was the same way. You could take Roger Daltrey and you could hear Keith Moon playing the song. Tony's not that intense and that busy, but it's the same kind of vibe. And so we had this other bass player named Robert Kearns who plays with Sheryl Crow and Skinner and everybody else. And
Yeah.
and again, he didn't have the time to do this. And I'm in Vegas with Aerosmith doing that residency, and we realized that Robert can't do it. So we're like, okay, we got everybody. We don't have a singer, but we need a bass player. And this is true. I look over at Tom and I just went, I need a bass player. That's the best bass player I know right there. The
Yeah.
songs perfect for him. We had like probably 6, 7 songs this time. And so I waited after our show and I was talking to him after the show and I said, "Hey, I think you need to be in our band." I said, "I got this thing." And he had actually invited us up to Boston and work on some of his material before all of this. So we did that. And so he knew us. But then once I presented our band, he was like, "Well, let me hear what you got." And I gave him the songs, and within an hour, he's like calling me back going, "I'm in." So now
Wow.
we've got the band, we got the nucleus, right? So you think it's
Yeah.
just all uphill from there. Well, it's or downhill from there. It's not. You got to find a singer.
Well, hold that thought. I want to ask you a question before you get into
Yeah.
Chasen about Tom. So you're saying Tom
Yep.
had his own material. So did he kind of
Yes.
did he park that material and just go with your material? Or did he bring some of that to the table? And
Well, kind of a little bit of both. What we did was
okay.
we went there. We spent 5 days in Boston with Tom. We knew we wanted Tom to play with Tony. And Peter and I are like, well, of course we're gonna do this. And I wanted to do it for Tom because I know Tom being an Aerosmith, it's like being an Aerosmith is a small world. I mean, there's only let's face it, there's it's a small tight group, and to get a song in Aerosmith, you're gonna have to wait in line because there's a lot of people that write a lot of songs.
Right.
Steven and Joe have songs for days, and most of them are gonna make a record. So Tom had all this material. And he was just talking about wishing he could get it, get something done with it. And so we went to Boston first. And then as I'm presenting this material to him, I already knew there was a couple songs that he had that we could incorporate into it. And so he still has, again, I didn't even say this, but everybody in this band is a songwriter. Everybody. So it's
Yeah.
it's like it's incredible because we're never gonna run out of material. If people, as long as people want to hear this, we could put stuff out every day. I mean, we just have so much material. And the other good thing is when you present something in a band like this, you've got 5 other people that know what they're doing that can go, "That's great, but what if we did this?"
Mhm.
You know, and we do that. We work through every song and every idea was there. Another saying is there's no bad ideas, it's just better ones.
Yeah.
And so get back to Tom. So Tom basically said, "Look, I want to do this," and he said, "If we can incorporate some of my material in," and then we started working on what we already had. And then we started writing new material. So, I mean, it came so quick. And we would start at 10 in the morning. We were in Atlanta at Peter Stroud's house. And we're literally in his basement. And it's funny because it looks like the set of Wayne's World. Remember from Saturday Night
Yeah.
Live, the Wayne's
Oh
the
yeah.
couch, and that's what it reminds me of. So we're like at Wayne's World, like writing songs. But they came so fast and so furious. And it was like, we didn't have a day where we didn't finish the day with an amazing song, and we never did get to any of Tom's yet. We just haven't had the time now because we've got probably 11 or 12 songs that we're going to release
Mhm.
10 of them on this new record,
Yeah.
and then it's like, next one, Tom's already like, I want to do this one. It's like, absolutely, we're in. So it's fun. And the song
It
that
has.
Tom had on the record was a new one we hadn't even worked on before. So
Okay. So it just I want you to talk about your search for the
yeah.
vocalist, but last
Ah,
comment on Tom is how is his feeling saying, you know what? Yeah, this is going to be a band. We're going to cut an album or two or three and we're going to do some touring. But you know what? There's no glory in this. We're going to be riding cars and Ubers and sleeping in hotels and maybe in somebody's house. How's he feel about going on that grassroots part all over again?
he said in an interview, him and I were doing an interview together, and he said, "Yeah, it's really great. We're in a van." And I said, "Last time you were in a van, you were on your way to the airport to get on your private plane. You weren't in one for 6 hours." But man, he's a trooper. He's having a, you know, you saw the show. It's the band is real. We have so much fun. There isn't anybody that isn't having a blast. And I mean, and Tom's, you can't wipe the smiles off of our faces. If, the first show we were like, maybe we're too Vegas, just smiling and happy stuff. Maybe we should be a little more serious. And then the first review you had, it was like, their happiness and excitement is contagious. And we just all went, nope, we're keeping with the happiness.
Okay.
Because we
Okay.
are. What's not to be excited about, right? This is awesome.
Yeah. All right. So talk about
It's
Chasen. How did
it's
you find him and like
okay.
how'd the vocal search go? Because it sounds like you had all of these song ideas, at least the genesis of them were there, but you needed a singer.
So Gary Steer, our songwriter. So Gary, I told you we were writing with. Gary's still with us. He's basically a sixth member of the band, but he can't tour. Gary got in a really bad car accident and messed his back up. So he just can't tour. He can't stand up for so that's why he's not a tour, a live member of this band. But so he was doing all the demo stuff. So we had vocals, and he's a great lyricist, a great melody writer. So all that was there. So when we first went to Boston, there's a guy named Caleb Johnson who was an American Idol guy. And
Mhm.
Tom heard him do Dream On once, and Tom was like, I wish we could have that guy come to Boston. So I'm like, I'll reach out and I'll get a hold of him. And of course he's like, the guy from Aerosmith, I'll be there. Yeah, of course he's gonna
Of
be.
course.
So it's funny. So he shows up. That's singer number one. We're like, oh, this guy, hopefully work out. He calls me the night before we go the next morning. We're going to start rehearsal, writing with Tom, and says, hey, I just tested positive for COVID and I'm really sick. So he spent the whole time in his hotel room and didn't get to really do anything with us. So there's number one singer. So that's how we started. So that should have been a sign of
Okay.
things to come. But so we did try out a bunch of different people, and then we had a fella named my buddy Phil Connelly who lives in England. He's a great singer. I'd met him when he had tried out for AC/DC. He's a great singer. He's great. He's too far away. There's just, I mean, there's all these guys that for whatever reason were good, but there was just something that just wasn't going to work out. We did actually hire a guy, and the next day he found out his father had Alzheimer's, and he's going to have to be the sole guy to take care of him. So good for him. He
Yeah.
so I mean, things like that. And then the day that we hired Chasen, his father, well, that within a couple of days had passed away. I mean, it was just like one of those weird, everything just kind of got weird. But so we looked really hard, and the story with Chasen is an incredible story because a friend of Tom's, as a studio, and he had sent Tom because Tom had asked him, "Hey, we're looking for a vocalist if you know anybody." And then he sent Tom a demo of this guy. I say kid because he's younger than me, which is easy. And he said, "Hey, you know, see what you think. It's not really your style of music, but see what you think." And so Tom sent it right to me. And he said, "What do you think of this guy?" And I listened to about a minute and a half, and I'm like, man, it sounds like Justin Timberlake-ish kind of stuff. It's just not what we do. So I put it aside. We tried a couple more people. And I remember after we offered, gave the gig to that guy, Marty, and then came back after, he couldn't do it. And I was like frustrated, like, what are we gonna do? So I just went and I listened to I listened to it again, this demo, And then in the middle of this demo, this Justin Timberlakey thing that I had, there was this rock voice. It was like the bridge had this big rock part. And I was like, wow, who's that guy? And it was in your face. And so I was like, there's our singer right there. But how do I call up this other guy who wants to be in the band and say, hey, I love your demo, but who's that guy singing, the rock part? So it was a little, is it cool to do that? So after a couple of days, I was just like, okay, I got to call this guy because we just got to have a singer. This is, it had been a year. I mean, it
Oh
had been a
wow.
year. Okay. I mean, that's a long time to be looking for a singer. I mean, we kept writing. That's why we got, a lot of material. But so we finally, I call up this guy and I said, hey, yeah, I love your demo tape, but hey, I got a quick question for you. There's a middle section where it's a really rock part. And I go, who is that guy? And he goes, it's all me. Well, that was Chasen. He said, it's all me. He goes, and then he tells me his background. And then Chasen's background is he was on the Mickey Mouse Club. He was in the school of Justin and Christine and all them. He hosted that show when they were on there. I mean,
Okay.
so he's been doing this since like 14 years old. I mean, his backstory is incredible. And he's an actor, he's all kinds of stuff. And I had no idea, and none of us did. So
Yeah.
I knew immediately once I heard this part, I said I knew this was a guy, and I was going to Boston, so I said, look, I'll meet you. I'll come up to Boston when I'm there. I was there a couple days later. I just want to meet you just to hang out. Within 5 minutes, I was like, this guy's he's the guy. And I called everybody. I remember calling Peter and saying, yeah, our singer he's the guy. And then we had him demo Sound of a Train. And the song that you hear on the radio, the first song we released, Sound of a Train, that is his tryout. We never let him re-sing it. It was so good.
Wow.
We're like, that's it, we're done. So and so so he's basically it's I was just telling somebody else the other day, when you have five people, you can be as amazing, but you got to fit like this. It's like you got to be able to work with the other people in the band and it's got to fit. And ours everybody just fits like a glove. Everybody has their own lane, we call it, where you know what you do and you do it good and it works. It's just so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, I have to be honest, Trace. Like, I was at the Boston show, and I
Yeah.
give you guys credit because it's a bold move and a daunting task to go out there and book tour dates, play 10, 20 shows around the country. You're still doing more, and nobody knows who you guys are. I think
Nope.
in the first week of the shows, it was the first week of January. I don't even think the single was out yet. So you're
No,
basically
was it?
having
Nope.
right. People are going there and hearing 10 songs they've never heard so far. I mean, what was your thought process to make that decision?
It was okay. Here's the crazy thing. So I gotta step back here. So our first show was October 17th. That's the top poster right there. It
Nice.
was in Nashville. We did a show in October, but that was actually not supposed to be our first show. It was supposed to be because what we originally decided was we were going to wait until Aerosmith finished in May, as in a couple months from now, when they finished their farewell tour, and then we were going to start. So we were going to get the record done, get all of our social media stuff ready to go, get our pictures, get our videos, have everything lined up for 6 months ready to go. Then we can just, be ready to go. Then Tom does an AARP interview for AARP magazine, and he says, "Yeah, it's really terrible about Aerosmith, everything going bad. But I have this new band called Close Enemies." And as soon as he said that, our manager called and he's like, "Guys, it's game on because now you don't have that time. The show in Nashville was going to be friends and families. We're going to do videos for songs and have fun and just, create content. Once it got to the point where Tom mentioned it, that show all of a sudden they started selling tickets to it. It's like people wanted to see it. So we
Yeah.
went out there going, okay, look, we're not a cover band. This is not a project. We're a band. What do we do? Well, we have enough name in this band we could to bring people in, and we think the songs are really, really, really good. Let's see how good they are. I remember the first song we played is a song called Rain, which will probably be the next single. And we were like, you finish that song and no one knows it. And you're like, you finish the song and either they're going to go, let's go get some popcorn and go home, or they're gonna love it. You don't know. And people went sideways. They were so crazy loving it. They were just like hooting and hollering and screaming and clapping. And so we all just kind of, all the grins, here you go. It was happiness. And it was like, okay, this might be cool. And you've seen it. You're hearing
Yeah.
songs. We just played Atlanta the other night, and had a guy come up to me, and it was the coolest thing. He goes, "If you'd have told me that I'd have come here for an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes and listen to stuff I've never heard before and have a good time, I'd have said you're crazy." He goes, "Every song you guys play blew me away. I couldn't wait to hear the next one." And he goes, I'll come back and see you every time you come around here." And I was like, that's what we were hoping for. That's what we thought. But when you create something, like if you draw something at your house, okay, I'm a really good drawer, and you go, this is a really good drawing, and you hand it to somebody, it's that minute of, is it a good drawing? To you, it is. Is it to anybody? So,
Well, it was interesting, Trace, because we did a show review. I did a concert review for our website for the blog. I'll make sure you get the links to that
yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
photos. But I observed the set list, and I even wrote some notes down that I brought to this discussion today.
Yeah,
Because you're right, there's some variety in the material, right? You have like Rain and Inside Out. I remember those songs well. They were more
yeah,
like your pop sensible
yeah,
modern rock radio hits.
yeah,
But then you had a song like Sweet Baby Jesus and then More Than I Can Ever Need, where there's elements of blues. There's a little country twang to them,
yeah.
some different stuff there, rootsy rock. And then you had like Wink and a Feather and Dry Rocket, which if you close your eyes could have been a Bad Company or a Foghat riff,
Massive.
something right
Yeah,
out of 70s. So there's a lot of variety what you guys are covering.
yeah. And that goes back to the what I told you about our writing style. So like Wink and a Feather, perfect example. I walked in and I said that morning, I said, guys, I got this idea. This is what I've got. Never finished the song. My gosh, I wouldn't even attempt it because I've got five other people, six counting Gary, or sorry, four of the five counting Gary, so if I say five, I mean with Gary in the band that have great ideas. So I took that Wink and a Feather, and then next thing you know, I had the first four lines of the song and the riff, and then next thing you know, 3 hours later, we're Chasen's in there singing, putting the vocal on it. It was like, wow. I mean, it's amazing. There's a lot of bands that have amazing players, right? But if you don't have the writing, I mean, how many people are going to come see Tom Hamilton if the songs suck? It's like maybe once, yeah, because it's a curiosity at that point. But if the material isn't there, you know,
Exactly. So what are your plans for the album? Are you going to release it as a whole at some point this year, or are you going to keep going with single by single?
well, man, it's weird. So, our manager, Denny Sanders with TLG, we're distributed by Virgin, and he said, "Look, it's a brave new world out there in the music business.
Yeah.
It's not the world that we grew up in, where you put an album out, you spend a year on the road, then you put another album out. The thing is, if we put the album out as one whole, like here it is, enjoy it, we would be a month later, wouldn't have anything to show because
Hmm.
people's attention spans are so quick now. They move on to something else. So the way you do it now is you just release a single, you release a single, release a single, and then probably I was told probably three or four singles, I'm gonna release the whole record. And it just seems to be the way to keep it, going longer and without it being you know, in and out. Because we put a lot of work into it. It'd be really horrible if people listen to it for 2 weeks and you know.
Yeah. Now, how many dates have you done so far, and how has the show's gone down? Because I would say at Boston, I mean, again, it's sort of a hometown show for Tom and Chase, and it was a Friday night. The place
Yeah,
was packed. You couldn't get a ticket.
we sold it
Um,
out. Yeah,
I mean, granted, it was a sit down kind of dinner place,
yeah,
but people were. What I found was cool in observing it is people were really paying attention to the songs, like really just listening. It was a quiet show, which was great
yep,
because for all the shows I see, I don't want to hear screaming noise, and especially if I'm hearing stuff for the first time, I want to sink my
yeah,
teeth into it. Like
yep,
you could see Chasen up there. He would talk in between songs. He talked about his father on his deathbed playing the
yeah,
demo of Sound of a Train, which was
yeah.
heartwarming.
That was he started talking about that, and that was and I was never going to ever bring that up because that's his personal story. But it's like his father was basically on his deathbed deathbed when he was, trying out for us. And I remember that he told me, he said that when you called me and told me that I was just singing in your band, I was sitting next to my dad. And that's one of the last things we talked about before he passed away. And he started telling that story on stage, and I couldn't play. I was like, it tears me up now because
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful story. Because his dad said, "Well, I'll always be there." He said, "I'm your number one fan." And his dad, since the Mickey Mouse Club, he's at his, he's his number one fan. And it was just so heavy when he's telling that story, and Tony's trying to count it in, and I could see just tears in his eyes, and it was like, wow, this is so. And finally, Chase had to stop because he couldn't sing it. And I'm like, I'm so
Yeah.
glad to stop because I just can't do it right now. It was so
Yeah.
that's exactly, that kind of puts us in a nutshell how we are, man. We're just real, we just do what we do, and it's not pretentious. It's not, it's the songs, like you said, all kinds of different styles. No one's gonna say, "Oh, you can't write that kind of song." No, if it's a good song, it's a good song. We're gonna write it.
That's right. So now what are you going to do? You're going to like, I mean, because obviously you're going to be out on the road with AC/DC in the summer.
Yeah.
Will you sprinkle in dates as you can, maybe come back in the
Yep.
fall? And then what
Yep.
about like, I mean, again, it was a treat to hear a couple of Aerosmith songs and a baby song. Like, what was the process on picking a few covers?
How could you not?
Like,
It's funny. Well, here I got a great story. So Midnight Rendezvous, the babies. I played that in high school, and it was really funny. So I remember when we were first working on it. I do the intro part, and I remember Tony and Peter just stopped me, and Tony goes, "You're playing it wrong." And there was a note that I wasn't playing right in this song, and I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Really?" So I was
one
like,
note,
"Great, here
just
I
one
am."
note.
Yeah, here I am playing, your song in front of you, and who knows, and then I'm playing it wrong. So I had to rethink that. And I'm like, I played that all through high school wrong. So, and then Tom, of course, how can you not? We've actually got a couple Aerosmith songs up our sleeve. I think we're gonna try to just, we wouldn't do them all. We just kind of slide them in and out. There's some really Tom has a really eclectic writing catalog with Aerosmith. If you look at what he's written and been part of, co-written, it's like there's some really, really cool songs, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was neat for the couple of selections you did, but you got to go with his signature "Sweet Emotion" in the bass line, gets everybody on their feet, and that kind of
It's
thing.
funny
But
because it's you're right. It's like I mean they call him Mr. Sweet Emotion. How can you not do it? I mean,
right,
it's
right,
like how does Aerosmith not play Dream On every night? Well, of course you got to, you know.
yeah,
So hopefully one
exactly,
day we'll have that song that we have to play every night. That'd be a good problem to have. Oh, so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, that's what we're doing. So AC/DC, I think when this is done, this tour, we're setting up a fall tour right now. We will hit it really hard in the fall. We're doing sporadic dates here and there in between my downtime on AC/DC, and then Peter's got Sheryl Crow stuff around there. So we're pretty good at at finding holes and places to put shows in there. So yeah, it's gonna be good. We're gonna have a pretty busy end of the year for sure. So definitely excited about that.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, you get down to Jersey. There was a Jersey date on the calendar, then they pulled it really quick. But that's sure you're going to get back here at some point in time. That's all right.
Well, I just want to tell you, we didn't. There was 3 shows that were booked. We didn't book them. We knew nothing about them. All of a sudden, they're on the website, and they're not on our website. They're in the they're on the web, and people are like, "Oh, can't wait to see you in blah blah blah." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And then we went online. There's 3 shows that I don't know. I don't know how high, how that any of that happened, but it did. But we've corrected. We've actually went to. I think we're doing one of those places, and maybe the second. We actually are talking to. I want to get into the Stone Pony, man. Could you go to the Stone Pony?
Oh, yeah, it's an hour away from me.
That's one of the
That
places that I think we would do amazing at that place.
It's the right size venue for you guys. The place they had you
Yeah.
booked out, to be honest, it was too big. It's a stuffy theater. You don't want
See,
to play
that's
there.
the other reason. That place is massive. We can't.
No.
Who wants to play to, we would rather play to like 300 people put, 250 people in there and have a really good time. That to me is incredible. That's fun, you know.
Well, that would go down well. Asbury Park's a great town now, and the Stone Pony's got your name calling you. So,
You kind of touched on it, but Tom is such a great guy, man. He's because like I said, Tom was one of the last ones. He joined this band. This is not Tom's band, and Tom's
right,
so mad that they're saying Tom Hamilton's new band, and we're like, look, we get it. We kind of have to because you kind of, whatever it takes to get the doors open, right?
right, yeah.
You know,
It's
but he's like, he always, every time he sees that post, he's just like, oh, I hate that. I'm sorry. And it's like, what a sweet guy.
that tells you a lot about it. But you're right. That's why I said it to you before. I'm like, I know this is your band. You could tell,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and it's no knock on Tom, but Tom's the guy on the
No.
marquees. He's going to get people in the door.
I've always been every band I've ever been in, I've always been that guy that's always been like either the guy everybody hated in the band because I'm so like intense because
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person, man, if I do something, it's 110%. It's not 50. That's
Yeah.
why I had to quit drinking 20 years ago because I was 110% in drinking as well.
Most of us were when we did, right? So
Right?
yeah,
So I
I know.
figured I'd rather be 110% not doing it because it seems to work better.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's just. So every like I said, everybody in the band, everybody just has they're just like the thing we do, and it works so well. But I feel for Tom, and this is really cool that we appreciate you for everything that you do because man, this is
No, we
awesome.
we love this stuff because it gets us in touch with the artists that make the music that we love so much. It's fun for us. It helps you guys out. It's a win-win across the board. So
It is, man.
tell
And it's just at the end of the day, we say every day we go, look, does anybody care? We care.
yeah.
We had a guy that manages the band Styx. He wanted to manage us, and he's like, I'm playing your music in the office. Everybody from all the other offices are coming in, going, who is these guys? Who is this? These guys are great. He goes, if this was 20 years ago, I could get every song played on the radio. Every song would be a single. He goes, now it's 20 years later, and I just don't know what to do with you guys. He goes,
Yeah,
because what you do isn't, it's not
I know.
hip,
I know.
but we like it,
Listen, I got teenage kids. None of them listen to rock. I'm nothing but look at my background. It's rock
I
metal. It's
know.
all over the place. I go to a million shows a year. I got Listen, Trace, this has been a great discussion, but I got to ask you real quick before we head out for
Yeah.
the day. The Steven Tyler Jam for Janie, which was only a few weeks ago, I assume you were there. 4 Aerosmith songs. There was a whole lot of love, and then he got up there with Nuno Betancourt and sang more than words. I mean, he sounded strong. He looked like he was having fun out there. And after the band had to retire, like it was really good to see him in some positive light. But how was he feeling mentally and physically after the gig? What was his attitude like?
Actually, I was not there.
Okay.
But I know from Tom. Um, I've known Steven for almost 20 years, and I'm sure it's great for him, but it's also, he's Steven Tyler. I mean, I don't know where his head is. I just know that he had a, very traumatic injury, and at his age, it's just something that you don't just jump back from. And I really
Right.
don't think guys can ever tour again. And honestly, I just, it's not going to happen. I mean, can they do a gig here and there? I bet they probably could, but I don't think Steven would ever do a gig if it wasn't 100% Steven because he's too much of a pro. That guy's 100% pro. He won't go out there and you'll never see that guy, miming to tracks. Let's just put it that way. Never going to happen. That's not his
But it was,
style.
but it was good to see him up
Yeah.
there, and at least it turned the corner and put some positivity on him, and it was good for a good cause.
I just hate it when everybody, they see that and they go, well, I can't believe they can tour. He just did that. He can tour. That's not an hour and 30 minutes. That's not,
Right.
traveling all across the country singing an hour and 30 minutes. I mean, it wears you out. It really does. And as we get older, it's harder on the body and it's like you just can't, it takes a while to recuperate, period. That's just the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Man, it's the toughest instrument. A guy can break his hand, come back from that, get a little arthritis, compensate, but your voice is your voice.
Yeah, I've had to learn how to play guitar three different times, different ways because of like just arthritis in my fingers, and
Yeah.
so now I play with my fingers and a pick. I can't do all like back in the '80s, do all that speed picking stuff, and it's like if I tried
Yeah.
to do that, I'd be not right now. So you just kind of bob and weave, and you just you do what you got to do, and that's and you just keep on moving, you know?
That's it. You keep on moving. So for more information on Close Enemies, head over to closeenemiestheband.com for all of their information and links to their socials. So Trace, I appreciate your time today. So for my guest, Trace Foster of Close Enemies, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.